Let me know when we're on. Two minutes? Ugh. So much fun. Hope our two people come back. Gosh. Oh, okay. That's right. My laptop. Hi, welcome. Welcome to today's National Archives Know Your Records program. My name is Andrea Bassing-Matney, and we are broadcasting live from the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. And thank you for moving over to this new web page with us. Half an hour later. So thank you so much for your patience. You guys are fantastic. So thank you for joining us. Many of you already know that you can log into the chat feature of this YouTube webpage and ask questions. Many of you already have written some nice comments, so thank you for that. It's encouraging. And there's also on this YouTube webpage a couple of hot links. One will take you to the presentation slides. You can download those to your heart's content. And you can also find live captioning. Our transcriber Beverly is helping us with that today. And thank you for moving over, Beverly. So today's program is entitled National Archives History Hub and presented by Alex Champion. Because of time, I'm just going to move right to his biography. And Alex Champion is an archivist in the textual processing branch. Since coming to the National Archives in 2015, he has participated in reference and outreach activities to promote public access to history. Mr. Champion holds degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in history and libraries and archives. And one other side note I'd like to give you before we begin, our presentation is about 30 minutes long, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end. So hopefully that will work with your schedules. Thank you again for your patience. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Alex Champion.
Hello. As Andrea said, my name is Alex Champion. I'm an archivist in the textual processing branch at the National Archives. I'm based in College Park, Maryland, just outside D.C. My previous credits for NAR activities include the 2016 Ask an Archivist Twitter video question and answer session, the training video on handling difficult situations in the research room, and the 2017 Valentine's Day commercial for Prologue magazine. That's the National Archives magazine. Today I hope the Screen Actors Guild finally takes notice of me and my efforts, and that I'll get my SAG card soon. Thank you for attending both here online and sometime in the future on YouTube. The myth that parents use to scare their children about social media posts is that the internet is forever. Being an archivist, I know this isn't true. Archivists are interested in the long game, and the internet is too fickle to save everything. It takes an army of people in the background to save what does remain. Other Know Your Records presentations highlight useful or interesting collections or stories. the facts of which do not change much over the years. The goals of these videos are to celebrate the complex beauty of historical topics, or to make future researchers familiar with useful records, and to discover history for themselves. These are not my goals. My goal is to familiarize viewers with History Hub, an evolving tool that will help novice or seasoned researchers. The internet may not be forever, but history is, so long as people keep asking questions of it. Real quick, the outline here, I will explain what History Hub is, talk about a few terms that might be encountered on the Hub or might be used in this presentation, describe the problem that History Hub is trying to fix from a user and organizational perspective, provide some examples, and then just emphasize some of the goals of History Hub to wrap it all up. So, it is my pleasure to present on History Hub, a crowdsourcing platform for American history, as a support community for American history researchers of all experience levels, archivists of all manner of subjects, and historical institutions of all stripes. History Hub was conceived by the National Archives Office of Innovation and launched in 2015. It's based on a collaborative platform that allows NARA facilities across the country to communicate with each other. The hope is to support a melange of public service through institutional and personal collaboration, since records and knowledge are almost never under the same roof, and definitely not under one roof. Just to highlight this problem, let's use Theodore Roosevelt as an example. Someone researching Theodore Roosevelt would likely need to visit the New York State Archives to research his time as governor. They would need to visit the National Archives downtown, where we are now, to look into his Assistant Secretary of the Navy career and his Spanish-American War enlistment. The National Archives in College Park would need to be visited to examine the civilian agencies that were created during his administration or that were made in the spirit of his progressivism. His personal and presidential papers are at the Library of Congress, since they predate the Presidential Records Act of 1978, in which case they would have come to the National Archives. Roosevelt was also an avid birder and taxidermist, so it would not surprise me if the Smithsonian had animals that Roosevelt stuffed. All of these institutions are independent from each other and have different collecting mandates. With enough participation in the History Hub, these separations and this independence of material will matter less and less. So, some concepts and terms that potential researchers on the Hub might encounter are the following. The first one is, of course, records. The definition of a record is a bit slippery, but it's generally agreed that records are evidence of activities. This could be something as simple as a shopping list to something as important as a law passed by Congress. With a shopping list, there's evidence that you eat, that you went to the store, you make lists. If you cross things off, we can surmise that you purchased those items. Generally, there are very few copies made of records. These aren't like library books that are repeated at different institutions. And it's very rare for 2 or more archives to have copies of the same records. They're usually controlled within their own organization, unless they've made copies themselves for their own purposes. Provenance is how archivists describe the origin of records, whether the origin be a person or an institution like a government or a corporation. Records that have different provenances are not mixed together in order to maintain that link to their creator. Original order is a bit of a misnomer, but basically it's a mandate that archivists maintain an order that records were kept in, so long as it is useful and it speaks to how the records might have been used and created and stored. If there are records that come to an archive that are in complete disorder, an archivist would intervene and put some order into them. Now, the National Archives, or NARA or NARA, there's some dispute about whether it's NARA or NARA, is the repository of government records. It's very rare for us to have anything that has a provenance outside of the government. At NARA, we organize things by record groups and entries, which are just words to describe collections of material. These other two terms here, series and accessions, are used in the National Archives, but they're also used by archives across the country, the world, to describe groupings of records for series, and accessions are records that are changing custody. They're coming into the control of whatever institution you happen to be. With us, it's government agencies. With a manuscript repository like a historical society, it might be a well-to-do person who donated their records that would be accessioned into their holdings. Retention schedules are things that governments and corporations use to decide when a record is no longer needed for regular use and whether it is going to be disposed of within legal limits. There are some records you have to maintain by law for a certain period of time. And they can also help archivists determine whether or not records will be, whether they'll be permanently valuable. One of the slides in the beginning here just said that NARA, that only about 1 to 3% of records created are considered permanently valuable. Archivists do a lot of weeding, but retention schedules help minimize that so that we know what we're getting and we can go confidently into our work. So we know that records are evidence of activity, but institutions and the public can regard records a bit differently. Now, to archives, records are created and used, stored by the person who created and used them, and then transferred or accessioned to the archives, which then stores them. And once these records are deemed valuable, if they are already deemed valuable, they are described so that they can be accessed by people, and then they are used by third-party researchers like historians. Now, for historical researchers, records are primarily evidence of activity. They are synthesized, compared to other bits of evidence to make an argument, thesis statements and all that. Published, as in books or journal articles, and then they are used again as evidence, this time by genealogists, veterans, amateur historians. And those user groups tend to look at records for very specific evidence. They are looking for names on a line. They are looking for maps, plats, financial tax documents saying how much land was worth. They're looking for very specific things generally. They're not trying to make a broader argument. Now, of these three groups, who is History Hub catering to? It's catering to everyone. So, if History Hub is a solution to something, what problem is it trying to fix from a user perspective? So here we have a relatable real-world example. On the left is a smart TV remote. On the right is a cable television remote. The first one is how one accesses apps on the television, and the one on the right, the second one, has voice commands so that you can just simply call for whatever it is you want and select to view it or remind you to watch it later. Now, maybe you might want to have a voice command function for your smart TV. That way you don't have to use two remotes, because no one wants to have two remotes. How do you find out how to consolidate to a single remote? For our purposes, this is a research question. Here's a screenshot from a Facebook post from a colleague of mine asking her social media network of friends to help her figure out how to make this work for her. For our purposes, she's a researcher. First person suggests calling them. Absolutely not. Who wants to call in this day and age? No. The internet has to have the answer. The internet always has the answer. This person suggests having someone come over to help them. No. Tomorrow? No. She wants an answer now. This person has a related example, but it's not especially helpful because they don't even use the same cable provider. The experts on this research question were not in her Facebook network, but she knew there had to be a better way to get orange juice from this orange. Oh, what do you know? Comcast has a Samsung Smart TV bit on their help and support forum. Someone had this very same question in 2015. 2 hours after this person asked the question, keep in mind this is not the same person who asked the social media group, this is someone from the year before. 2 hours later, this person got an answer from a citizen expert who does not work for Comcast, and sadly they said, no, you cannot consolidate down to a single remote. This was corroborated by someone else. Notice the gamification elements, which scores the contributors. Those are the silver problem solver, regular contributor, and the colored medallions beneath them. Since these people post so frequently and are so highly regarded, our researcher in this scenario could proceed with the knowledge that she had gotten the best answer available to her, even if it wasn't the one that she wanted. So, wah, 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 wah. Sadly, 2 remotes. So, she asked a very specific research question, even though it did not get her what she wanted. She got an answer within hours. People who are knowledgeable, citizen experts, helped her. And the answer is searchable online for anyone who has a similar research question, just like she did. Now, lost my place here. Got a little ahead of myself there. There are, of course, other websites where the public can submit a question. Sites like Yahoo Answers, Quora, Reddit, just to name a few. But these sites do not specialize in history. They are minimally moderated, if at all. And, quite frankly, they can be problematic for sensitive or high-profile institutions to use officially. History Hub is powered by the same platform as the Apple support community. Here is a similar question that was asked after someone, not me, I swear, dropped an iPhone into a toilet. Now, questions in the History Hub will be answered. This GIF speaks to the feeling that I suspect many people have when they've asked the internet for an answer, but no help is found. Historical research troubles can't be resolved as easily as a toilet phone. So, what problem does the History Hub address from an organizational perspective? Just using NARA as an example. NARA answers questions on a one-to-one basis through email, phone, and consultation. In the last 6 months, 36,000 research questions came through our website. Now, this excludes direct emails to reference staff as well as regional offices. NARA has offices across the country. Another problem is that we answer similar questions again and again. We answer the same questions differently depending on the staffer who responds. We can't fully answer a question because sometimes the answer lies in another institution. Sadly, we don't have the answer to everything. So, our solution is a platform where people can get answers from multiple institutions, is comprised of a community of citizen experts, and has a knowledge base that scales and improves in quality over time. So, how might this model work for cultural institutions and the public? This slide is based on nothing more than my own observations and meandering thoughts since I've started my career as an archivist. It attempts to express the varying amounts of involvement, meaning effort and time, necessary to get an answer. On the far left, imagine a hypothetical question where the answer can be found with a straightforward online search. A little more difficult than that is phoning or emailing the National Archives and getting some canned answers. We have lists of frequently asked questions with some standard language that we can send a person if maybe it didn't fit on the frequently asked questions page in the website, or perhaps they missed the frequently asked questions page entirely, and so we can give them a standard answer. Slightly more involved is something that's findable online, but with some digging. Maybe you have to go a few clicks into a website. Maybe you have to refine your search strategies. Maybe you have to go to the library and you have to find the right book or a journal or something like that. Still more difficult is submitting, well, more effort is submitting an inquiry to the reference staff. Now, this actually doesn't take too much effort. You can simply go to the website and submit a question. The only issue with it, though, is that it takes time, days or weeks. Weeks are more realistic. Again, 36,000 requests come in, and those are just the ones that are through the website. And unfortunately, there is a cap on how much time we're able to spend on some questions. Another example is watching a Know Your Records presentation. I can say with certainty that the answer to many people's questions can be found in watching a Know Your Records presentation. One of the difficult parts is just making sure that you find the right one. Well, much more difficult actually, is visiting a National Archives facility, especially if the records that you're looking for are in one that's far away. If you live in Alaska and the records are here, you're talking airfare, hotels. It's an expensive proposition. And of course, the most time and effort spent on getting an answer to a research question is when the answer does not exist. History Hub fits somewhere in the middle of all this. It can help answer more involved questions fairly quickly. We're talking hours or days. And as the hub matures and it accrues more questions and more answers and more links, it should shift a little bit further to the left. You know, simply typing in your question might yield a History Hub page, and lo and behold, there's your answer, just like with the Help and Support Forum for the Smart TV. So when might people ask for help? People aren't sure how to start their research. People run into dead ends, and they aren't sure how to go. So let's ask a question. This person is looking for World War I soldier pictures. Here's an answer from a citizen expert on the History Hub. They recommend a resource and a way to access them. They make a slight mistake. They seem to be holding down the Shift key a little bit. That should be fold 3. Now, this answer highlights one of the benefits of History Hub, because if someone had submitted this request through the standard website approach and they weren't specific enough, they would need to be contacted, and if they didn't have right contact information, we would only be able to give them an incomplete answer, and they would have to resubmit their request and start the whole thing again. But on History Hub, a conversation can take place. Were they looking for a particular soldier, perhaps? Were they looking for a unit? Were they looking for soldiers in places, specific places? An exchange can happen with no follow-ups necessary through the phone or through the website. This person wants another World War I picture. This citizen expert offers some leads, but also informs them that the records might have been destroyed through retention schedules, which, you know, was a term I used earlier. This is a more complete answer, and I say that not just because I'm the one who wrote it. You can see next to my name, it gives the affiliation. That's the icon for the National Archives. Now, this particular bit of advice is an amalgam of advice from archivists in St. Louis, where our Personnel Records Center is. It also uses some of the coded paragraphs, which I mentioned earlier, for frequently asked questions. And it also includes some information about just some firsthand experience I have with still pictures branch reference. I don't think other people would have come up with the same answer. That's why it's an amalgam. Now, notice Just as with the help and support forms for Comcast, there is some gamification at the bottom. You'll notice the ranking there. It was liked by 3 people, and it was found helpful by 3 others. That might tell a researcher who has a similar question and stumbles upon this post that, hey, this Alex guy, he knows his business. More photos. Oh, people love photos. This one for the Civil War, though. Now, that's a more difficult prospect. Here's another National Archives employee and expert pointing this researcher to some National Archives resources and Library of Congress, as well as giving them some information about how to use different pages on the website and contacting the Still Pictures branch. This person wants to know about a visitor in 1926 and 27 during the Coolidge administration. There we go. This citizen expert provides a lot of really just valuable context. They explain that the Coolidge's personal papers were destroyed, but he also points them to some Library of Congress resources and a different research strategy to sort of get around the destruction of his personal papers, such as going through his secretary, which, that's just good strategy right there. This person is looking for lists of men who worked on the Eads Bridge in St. Louis, probably before the St. Louis Arch, the most iconic landmark in the city. Since it wasn't built by the government, we wouldn't have anything at National Archives, but other people might, so why not? This person, the same who answered the last question about the Coolidge administration, points them to some Library of Congress resources. Even though they couldn't give them a list, they did provide some links that were possibly useful to them. Now, this one was interesting. Just like the remote, this person had done their homework. They were trying to find publication information for a government publication on accredited higher education institutions. And unfortunately, all we were able to do was to confirm her suspicion that there was no document for the year that she wanted that could prove when a certain school had received its accreditation. And bit of a sad way to end it, but at least she could eliminate the National Archives as a source for her answer. We help people research novels. We help people answer very nerdy questions. This person wanted to find the free text of scanned microfilm. So basically they could do a Control-F search. And they asked a question about the optical character recognition. Here's our online catalog expert, Jason Klingerman, giving her a very nerdy explanation. I'm not a technical person, but it seemed very impressive. And it was marked as helpful on the bottom there. Now, simply typing your question in the front page will populate a list of questions that contain similar words. Search strategy is important, so if you are interested in Black history, be sure to check for questions containing the phrase African American as well. However, History Hub is an evolving platform, and its searches may be more robust in the future. We are currently looking for partners to test the model, including the Smithsonian Institution and the Library of Congress. Now, what are our goals with the History Hub? To facilitate research and connect new audiences or promote lesser-known collections, enable contributions from the public and from subject matter experts of all stripes, thus increasing the knowledge base, improve customer service for audiences accustomed to getting answers quickly, and decrease workload over time by increasing transparency. So how do you begin? Visit history.gov, register to create a user account, and ask or answer a question. These are some of the current communities of mutual interest that exist in the Hub. If you're welcome to submit questions to any of them. If none of these meet your interests, more communities may be on the way. We welcome all people in all communities because, after all, this platform is for everyone. Feel free to go to history.gov, create an account, and ask a question. Yes, the woman in the front row there. Yes.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you, Alex, for holding on tight while we fixed the technical glitches at the beginning. I do have one question. As you were going through your presentation and you had actual screenshots, I saw that you could actually see people's names. So I guess that's the account that they logged in with. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering about privacy. Does one have to use their own name if they create an account on history.gov?
No, they don't have to use their own names. They can use an alias. The only bit of information that must be corroborated is that you have a valid email address. You don't have to use your real name. People will be instructed to create a username, and then they will provide a name that they can, first and last name, that will represent them on the site. I've never seen a person's username actually visible in front, so it could be something discreet even. But yeah, so it's all on the open web, so people can see it. And if you're a little bit shy, then you don't have to use your real name. In fact, on the example earlier about Black versus African American history, one of those questions was an alias for a profile that I created just as sort of a test. My name was Kevin.
Nice. Thank you for answering that question. And if you're here on site with us, if you have a question, feel free to ask our presenter. In the meanwhile, I do have another question that's come up from our online audience. She asked, how long has the History Hub been up and running? And another question, a follow-up, how has it changed up to this point?
Oh.
So how long and what's changed in that short time that it's been up? I believe it was considered until recently a pilot program.
Yeah, it started. It was launched in 2015, but it's been worked on since 2011, at least from the conception stage. As it says, it's History Hub beta, so it's still a work in progress. I unfortunately haven't. I began working at the National Archives in 2015, but that's the same year this was started. But I assure you that was just a coincidence. So I could not speak to how it's evolved, but it will continue to change.
Fair enough. I know that when we were practicing your event, we had one of the founders talking about how they really wanted to bring immediacy to the people's questions. I do have one other question that's come up, and her question is, can users make comments on other people's questions and answers, and who can edit questions and answers? So can they comment, and can there be any editing?
People can comment. It's collaborative, so you can you can contribute. You can say, that is a good answer. That is, you can disagree politely. It's a moderated site, and there are terms of use where you have to be polite. I'm having a momentary.
Okay.
I can't actually remember if you can. I don't believe you can edit your own posts.
Oh, you can't go backwards
I don't believe
at
so.
this time. We can't go back and edit a post.
Yeah, I think you would have to reply. It's escaping me at the moment. I made that sample question so long ago. I hadn't even considered that.
So it's a good question. So if anybody has a question that wasn't answered because we've run out of time, or something occurs to you later, feel free to submit your questions. Do we have any other questions for our presenter? This is nice. I would like to just add one more comment, and then we'll finish up for today. So I'm going to make my way up to you. So we were lucky enough to have one of our founding folks who started the History.gov program, and her name is Kelly Osborne, and she's on our online audience, and she says, yes, you can edit your own comments.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. So this concludes today's Know Your Records program. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your patience, and we look forward to seeing you again. This broadcast is recorded, so you can watch it again at your convenience at any time, and the presentation materials will stay online. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alex.